In fact, they're only truly happy when they're standing on their heads. Now, I'd like to show you some very interesting conditioning for Alpha Plus intellectuals. We have a big batch of them on rack 5.
I'm sorry, Mr. Forster. 10 to 3. No time for the intellectual embryos, I'm afraid. We must go up to the nurseries before the children have finished their afternoon sleep. Some other time, perhaps.
Bernard, I was looking for you.
Lenina, hello.
I wanted to talk to you about our New Mexico trip. I'd simply love to come with you for a week in July. That is, if you still want to have me.
Look, Lenina, hadn't we better talk about it somewhere else?
Why?
I mean, with all these people about.
How funny you are. Now, you'll give me at least a week's warning, won't you?
Lenina,
Bernard, what on earth's the matter? Oh, anyway, I must fly, Bernard. I'm meeting Henry Forster on the roof. Let me know in good time about the date. Bye.
Well, I should say she was pretty. Hey, pneumatic, too. And how?
Yes.
I say, Mark, you don't look plump. What you need is a gram of soma. 1 cubic centimetre cures 10 gloomy sentiments.
Shut up!
Well, really? What's the matter with the fellow?
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The infant nursery. And before we enter the neo-Pavlovian conditioning rooms, a little background. Once upon a time, while our Ford was still on Earth, there was a little Polish boy called Rubin Rabinovich. You know what Polish is, I suppose?
A dead language, sir, like French and German.
And what about parent?
Well, sir, when the babies were decanted...
Born?
Well, then they were the parents. I mean, the parents were the father and mother.
The mother, yes. These are unpleasant facts, I know. Most historical facts are unpleasant. Anyway, in those days of gross viviparous reproduction, children were always brought up by their parents and not in state conditioning centres. And little Reuben's mother and father, one evening, by an oversight, happened to leave the radio turned on in his bedroom. While the child was asleep, a broadcast program from London started to come through. And the next morning, to the astonishment of his mother and father, little Reuben woke up repeating, word for word, a long lecture by a curious old writer, one of the very few whose works have been permitted to come down to us, George Bernard Shaw. The principle of sleep teaching or hypnopedia had been discovered. However, those early experimenters were on the wrong track. They thought that hypnopedia could be made an instrument of intellectual education, whereas if they'd only started on moral education... Let's go in. Now, everyone, absolute silence, please. Mustn't wake the babies. Nurse?
Yes, Director.
What's the lesson this afternoon?
Well, we had elementary sex for the first 40 minutes, but now it's switched over to elementary class consciousness.
Elementary class consciousness. Let's have it a little louder.
Stupid to be able to read or write. Besides, they wear black, which is a beastly colour. I'm so glad I'm a beta. Alpha children wear grey. They work much harder than we do because they're so frightfully clever. I'm really awfully glad I'm a beta because I don't work so hard. And then we are much better than the gammas and deltas. Gammas are stupid. They all wear green, and delta children wear khaki. Oh, no, I don't want to play with delta children. And epsilons are still worse.
Yes.
They're too stupid.
They'll have that repeated 40 or 50 times more before they wake. 120 times, 3 times a week, for 30 months. After which, they go on to a more advanced lesson. This is the greatest moralizing and socializing force of all time.
I really enjoyed the golf, Henry. Let's just go to the Feelies this evening, shall we? I hear the new one at the Alhambra's first rate. There's a love scene on a bearskin rug. They say it's marvellous. Every hair of the bear reproduced, the most amazing tactual effects.
All right. Look, Lenina, that's the Hounslow Feely studio now. Do you see?
They must be changing the shift. All those gammas and epsilons, they're like ants. I suppose they're queuing up for a place in one of those monorail things. I'm glad we don't have to. Khaki's a hideous colour, don't you think?
Of course. And that's Slough Crematorium now. We'll soon be home.
Henry, why do the smokestacks have those things like balconies round them?
Phosphorus recovery. More than 1.5 kilos per adult corpse. Yes, it's fine to think we can go on being socially useful even after we're dead, making plants grow.
True. But isn't it queer that alphas and betas won't make any more plants grow than those nasty little gammas and deltas and epsilons down there?
All men are physico-chemically equal. Besides, even epsilons are useful.
Oh, yes. Everyone works for everyone else. I suppose epsilons don't really mind being epsilons.
Of course they don't. How can they?
I'm glad I'm not one.
But if you were an epsilon, your conditioning would have made you no less thankful that you weren't a beta or an alpha. Everybody's happy now.
Yes, everybody's happy now. Well, I'm not sure about Bernard Marx.
Him. He's a rhinoceros. You can't teach a rhinoceros tricks, and some men are like that. They don't respond properly to conditioning, poor devils. Bernard's one of them. He's pretty harmless, though.
Pretty disquieting all the same. That mania of his for doing things in private. I mean, what can you do in private? Apart from going to bed, of course, and you can't do that all the time. Do you know what he wanted to do our first afternoon together? Go walking in the Lake District. Land on top of Skiddaw and walk for a couple of hours in the heather. Alone with me.
But surely you'd be alone all night.
No. He meant alone for talking.
Talking? What about?
Himself. He was really miserable the whole afternoon. Absolutely refused a half-gram of soma. I'd rather be myself, he said. Myself and nasty. Not somebody else, however jolly.
1 cubic centimetre.
Cures 10 gloomy sentiments, of course it does. And a gram in time saves 9. He said he wanted to be more on his own, not just a cell in the social body.
Really?
It's horrible. How can he talk like that about not wanting to be part of the social body? After all, everyone works for everyone else. We can't do without anyone. Even epsilons.
Even epsilons are useful.
Exquisite little creature, isn't she? You know, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to tell you may sound incredible. But for a very long period before the time of our Ford, and even for some generations afterwards, erotic play between children was regarded as abnormal. And not only abnormal, actually immoral.
Sir, do you mean children weren't allowed to amuse themselves?
Even adolescents, like yourself. Barring a little surreptitious autoerotism and homosexuality. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing?
In most cases, until they were over 20 years old.
20 years old?
20. I told you you'd find it incredible.
But, sir, what happened? What were the results?
I can tell you. The results were terrible. Terrible.
Oh, controller. What an unexpected pleasure. Students, what are you thinking of? This is the controller. This is his Fordship Mustafa Mond, the resident controller for Western Europe, one of the 10 world controllers.
Yes, Director. I'll take over from here, I think.
You mean you'll stay and actually talk to the...
It's all right, Thomas. I won't corrupt them. Now, you all remember, I suppose, That beautiful and inspired saying of